Hi everybody, it's Jessica and this is VEDA day 19. I've been racking my brain all day what I wanted to talk about in my vlog today, and I don't know if it's that I have too many thoughts in my head or not enough thoughts in my head, but for whatever reason I've been really struggling. So I just came up to my office and I just started looking around my office at the different things that I have in here. My office, when I left the classroom, kind of became what would have been my desk area, and it has a lot of teacher related things in here. I've got, just things that are important to me and things that were hanging up above my desk and quotes that I like, and I've got several shelves of books and lots of artwork and other random things, notes and whatnot from kiddos. And so one of the things that I found is actually this book that was made for me my first year of teaching. We love you, Mrs. Raleigh. Nothing like a little kid love. I miss that a lot. And it's something that I kind of just pulled off a shelf and I started reading through it. And they made it for me at the end of the year. I was actually an intern that year. I substitute taught for a year, and then I spent a year getting my alternative licensure and my master's degree. And I did that through this intern program. And so I spent half the year in fourth grade and then half of the year in third grade. So this is the one that my third graders made for me. And as I was reading it, I realized that basically the book, and I'll actually read a few that I think are really cute, really funny. But the thing that I noticed the most is that all the kids, and it was part of the prompt, I'm sure, from the teacher who was facilitating creating this book. But it's thank you for teaching us this, thank you for teaching us that. And as I was looking at their pictures and looking through the things they were talking about, I was not just remembering all of the things that I did in that semester with those students, the books that we read and the lessons that I taught and the units that I planned, but I was also thinking about how each of these students taught me something. And so I also wanted to share a little bit about what several of these students taught me, because I think that's one of the things that I really miss about teaching, is that I think that one of the coolest things about being a teacher is not so much that you get to teach others, but that they teach you. And especially, with kiddos, I feel that way. So the first one that I wanted to read is from Carlos. And Carlos writes, "Dear Mrs. Raleigh, thank you for being our guide and for being our intern. I really appreciate that. You're really silly, and that's the way I like it. When you are there, I don't need to worry ever. When you were here this semester, I knew you would help in every way, and I was right." But Carlos was a really funny kid, and he was sort of what you would call like the typical comedic relief of the classroom. And he just always had like a big smile on his face and just really like loved life. And he said, "Thank you for being our guide." I actually got to we did a sleepover at the Museum of Nature and Science, and so I got to do an overnight with the kiddos. And my group was all fairly what are considered like fairly rambunctious boys, and the ones who I think struggled in school like academically to like fit in the box and to like sit still and do all that kind of stuff. And I was really blown away by having this group of boys for a day and a half in the museum as we were going around looking at the different exhibits, because they were so mature and they were so thoughtful. I mean, they were super silly also, but they were really thoughtful, insightful, and it was so sweet to see them all cuddled up in their little sleeping bags, like with just their pillows and their sleeping bags, and just snoring away, some of them in the museum. So it was a really special experience, and so I loved just the smile that Carlos always had on his face with everything that we were doing. Another one that I wanted to read was from another boy in my group. This is Henry, and Henry wrote, "Dear Mrs. Raleigh, thank you for feeding Tim the triops. Thank you for chaperoning my group at the camp-in. Thank you for answering my questions. Thank you for picking out my spelling words sometimes. Thank you for teaching the kindness unit," from Henry. And what he was talking about, it was funny, I had totally forgotten about these triops, and it's part of the third grade. I hope it's not part of the third grade curriculum anymore, but it was always part of the third grade curriculum for the life cycles unit, that they send you, these science kits, these buckets basically, and the life cycles for third grade include these little triops, and you actually they come in the bucket with like this whole tank and this whole setup, and you're supposed to like set this whole tank up, and you're supposed to basically like get the triops to grow and to live. And so it was funny because my mentor teacher, who had taught third grade for many years, made a comment about like, "I can never get these things to live. Like, I don't know what is going on," but it's also really hard because like the temperature has to be just right and the water has to be just right, and it's like this whole big ordeal. And probably none of the things that you're learning when you're doing this have anything to do with life cycles, because you're so focused on like the temperature of the water, and then they die and the kids never got to see them. So I actually like worked diligently to get these triops to live, and we actually successfully got Tim. Is what the kids named this one triop, and the kids named him Tim, and Tim actually lived for quite a while. So it was I don't know if it's a special skill that a lot of other interns didn't have, but I was able to get Tim to live, and it was like a really big deal for the third graders, and sort of became part of my legacy, I suppose, that I was able to get Tim to live. Another one that I wanted to read is from another boy who was in my group at the museum, and his name was Brandon. And Brandon wrote, "I'm so thankful for all the things you have done for all of the class, and also you were the leader of the camping group. It was so fun and awesome." And the thing that I love, I will always use this story to this day. It was funny when I read this and I saw his little face in this picture, because just the other day I was sharing an experience and telling a story about Brandon to someone else that, I don't remember how it came up, but I always tell a story of how when we went to the museum, I was just so blown away because Brandon really struggled with a lot of things academically. And he was a little bit below grade level on some things. I taught at a gifted and talented magnet school, so when I say he was a little bit behind grade level, I would say it was definitely more pronounced for Brandon, because a lot of the other kids were really ahead of grade level in almost all, if not all, of their content areas. And so Brandon is definitely one of those kids that when you see him in the classroom, you would never think that he liked school. It just didn't seem like it was his thing, and you could tell that he didn't feel comfortable there, and he really struggled. He really, really struggled to like do school. And I think it was one of the first times that I realized that school is doing a disservice to so many kids, and not really engaging them in the way that we could be engaging them. So we're walking around the museum, and every single exhibit that we went up to, Brendan would walk up to it and say, "Oh, Mrs. Raleigh, this is the such and so, and it does this, and did you know, and did you know, and did you know, and what if this, and da, 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 and I read this thing." Every single exhibit, he knew so many facts and historical information, and like just really deep thinking and insights and understanding of like the complexities of the different, not just scientific principles, but like the animals that we were looking at. Like every I swear, every single exhibit we stepped into, that kid knew his stuff, and I was blown away. And I remember thinking, like, this is why we need to take kids out of the classroom more. This is why field trips are important. This is why kids should be doing hands-on experiential learning and having these active, engaging experiences. Brandon, I think, is so typical of a lot of kids who, when you see them in the classroom, you would never think that, oh, this kid is excelling in all these things. And I remember like parent teacher conferences, there were so many conversations with his mom about like, yeah, he's struggling with his handwriting, and this is a challenge, and he doesn't sit still to read a book, and like all these things. And I wish that I had the presence of mind at the time to ask him, like, Brandon, how do you know all this, and where did you read this, and all this kind of stuff. But he was interested in a certain content, and he dug in deep with it, and he knew his stuff. It was pretty incredible. So yeah, I still use that example as something that really like keeps me going, I guess, on this idea that like, yeah, school should not be a box that we expect all the kids to fit into, and he's one of many who can benefit from an alternative kind of way of looking at school and what the purpose of school is, and how all of that looks. Another one that I liked was Deja. Deja was saying, "Thanks for helping me finish my book. It turned out to be a good book, so I've decided to read the next book." And I remember doing a lot of reading with these kids, but gifted kiddos tend to be, not always, but they tend to be, very. A lot of them are bookworms. They just will devour books. I mean, it's actually the opposite problem a lot of times with those kiddos, where like you can't get them to put down the book, and you're trying to teach something else or talk to them about something else, and they're like hiding the book in their desk. A lot of times gifted teachers will talk about how like, yeah, no, my kids aren't allowed to have, like, I have to turn the desk around if the desk has the space in the front where they can put their materials, because otherwise the kids will like hide their book in there and be that they're not texting, they're not doing other stuff, they're not writing notes, they're trying to read a book. Which, like, in the scheme of problems that you could have with classroom management, like getting the kids to stop reading is a fairly good problem to have. In any event, this third grade class actually had a lot of reluctant readers. And so that was something that I remember doing a lot of, was just like talking to kids about books. The BFC topic this morning, BFC 530 chat, was actually about how do you like instill a joy for reading and help kids love reading. And in the Voxer group, a couple of teachers were talking about just, modeling it, and how you have to just get them hooked on what they're interested in. And I shared, just some of the ways that I've done that in the past. And for me, what it came down to is like build relationships with the kids and get to know them as people, and then help them to know which books to look for, or read the books together. Like, oh, I want to learn about this too, let's read this together. Or can you keep me accountable? I'm going to read a chapter every night. Are you going to read a chapter every night? Like those kinds of things go a long way with kiddos. And so, Deja was one of the reluctant readers. And at first it was like pulling teeth to try to get her to like stick with a book. It was like every time it was silent reading time, or it was time to read even just for a few minutes, like in between, during transition times, it was like, well, there was actually a lot of kids. It wasn't just Deja, but like there were always kids in the library like, oh, I didn't like this one. And I was like, oh my gosh, why? You're spending way more time in the library picking out a book than you ever are spending reading the words in a book. And so I learned a lot that year about how do you help kids to get hooked into books and help them pick the right books, right off, and all that kind of stuff. So Deja definitely, she's one of the ones who helped me with that. Another one that I thought was really cute was from Bridget, and Bridget said, thank you for helping me become a better student. Thanks for showing me the right way and helping me become a better writer. Thank you for teaching the kindness unit and taking us to the Ronald McDonald House. Thanks for giving the try-ops to us. I hope you're still going to be a teacher. I hope you loved working with us. And so I had also forgotten this. It's amazing how quickly you forget some of the things that are like a big deal to you when you're in the moment, and many years later they're not less significant, but like you just need your memory jogged, I guess, about them. And one of those things was what she referred to, which was the kindness unit and going to the Ronald McDonald House. It was the first unit that I actually planned completely on my own and taught on my own, and like it was all me, and it was basically my final project as an intern. And so I spent, weeks and weeks and weeks developing this and creating lesson plans and just like doing research. I was amazed at how much research you do when you are doing a unit plan, which I think is another thing that I miss about teaching is like when you're getting ready to develop a unit or teach a new unit, you're doing a lot of learning yourself and a lot of research and things like that. But what the topic of my unit was really the kindness unit. And the idea was like, helping the kids to see that, because a lot of times I think they feel like they are insignificant. They are just one person. They can't do a lot to change the world. I think there's a lot of kids who kind of just like, they have that activism in them, and they, especially third and fourth grade, they start to notice, and gifted kids especially are more prone to this, of like noticing the injustices in the world and wanting to fix them and be advocates and all of that kind of stuff. But I also had noticed with these kids and some of the other kids that I had taught, that they don't necessarily think that their actions are big enough to change the world. And I wanted them to see like your voice matters, your actions matter, and your choices matter, and you can make a difference in this world. And yes, you are only one person, but that one person is an important person, and like you can do something that then trickles to other people. And the idea of paying it forward, we did a lot of things, activities and conversations about how, our words, positive and negative, affect others. And, we pulled in some like bullying kind of themes, because the class was struggling with some of that. And, third and fourth grade is pretty common to start dealing with those kinds of things. And so, pulled in some of those things, and then we did a lot of just different activities and reading and thinking about how we can actually make a difference in the world. And the sort of one of the culminating pieces of this was that we actually went to the Ronald McDonald House, and the kids were able to cook. They like planned the whole meal. They budgeted for it, like they did from start to finish. They planned the whole thing. But we went to the Ronald McDonald House, and we cooked the meal and then served the meal, and then visited with the folks who were staying at the Ronald McDonald House. And it was such an amazing experience to see the impact that had on the kids, and it really like opened their eyes to the brevity of the situations that a lot of those families were going through. And typically the families who are staying at the Ronald McDonald House, they have small children or fairly young children, up through sort of teenagers, but especially very little and small kiddos. And it was really, I think, hard for them at first to see like, oh, this could be my parents here. Like you could see them processing that, and you could hear in the things they were talking about that they were sort of piecing that all together, and putting themselves in someone else's shoes. And so that was just really cool to see that. And that's kind of been a theme throughout my teaching career. I actually have done that unit. I do it. I did it every single year that I was a teacher, with modifications and tweaks, and hopefully it got better every year as well. But I think it's really important that the kids think about those kinds of themes. And in general, that's just been like a constant in my teaching, is that even when we're not doing that unit, we're thinking about those things, and we're talking about kindness and, all of that kind of stuff. So I think that, that unit had a big impact on them, but it also had a really big impact on me and that experience. A funny little bit that Amelia wrote, it's Amelia, about the Ronald McDonald House. She said, thank you for reading The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. It's one of my favorite books now. It's one of my favorite books too, Amelia. And then she said, "Thank you for taking us to the Ronald McDonald House. It was very fun. The walk there was related to the kindness unit because if we took a bus, that would be polluting." Yes, very true. That was another big part of the unit was like we talked about recycling, and one of my favorite activities was actually we all day long, or maybe we did it for a whole week. Oh gosh, that actually would be a really long time. I was an intern. I was like eager and ready and like young and a little naive. And so what we did was we actually didn't throw away any of our trash, recycling, nothing. We carried it off. So the kids had, I put like, plastic bags. They all brought in plastic bags. The families donated to us, and we like lined their backpacks with these plastic bags, and they had to wear their backpack every time they would go to the lunchroom or go to specials. Like they took it with them, and every bit of trash and recycling that they had to put it in their backpack. And then every day we would weigh it, and then at the end of the week we weighed each person's trash and then each person's recycling. And then it was partly a math activity because it was an interdisciplinary unit. So it was all, every single subject was incorporated and it all kind of tied together. And so then there was like these math activities that we did, and we graphed and we made charts and we looked at the data in a lot of different ways, and we calculated it and added up all of the amounts of trash and recycling that each student had. And then over the course of the whole class, and then we kind of started doing some averages like, okay, if this is on average, how many kids are in our school and how much trash is it? So you can see we took it from like the individual level all the way up to, the city and the state. And they had to like look up some of that data so that they would know what they were multiplying by, like how many third graders are there in Colorado and those kinds of things. So it was really interesting to see how much waste we have even just in a week. And then we were talking about how can we cut back on that. So pollution was one of the things. And I just thought that was really funny. But that was the year that I started, that I decided that if I didn't have my coffee cup with me, then I couldn't have a cup of coffee. And to this day, I like try really hard, and I've sort of gotten away from that a little bit. I'm a little bit more lenient about that, like especially because I like going through the drive-through and you can't use your own cup. But things like that, I don't know, it just reminded me of like who I was at that time and the things that I was really passionate about and like really kind of hardcore about. Like that was my thing for the year. Like if I don't have my coffee cup, I can't have coffee, which when you're an intern, you need your coffee. So that was bad. And the other thing that I was reading that I thought was really interesting was just how many of the kids were saying, I can't wait to have you as a teacher. You're going to be a great teacher. Julia wrote, thank you for everything you did with us, teaching us the kindness unit and reading us The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. I think I really benefited from all your teaching. I think you'll go on to be a great teacher. Thank you for raising Tim. And I realized, like, as I was reading through these notes from all these kids, that like they were just so compassionate and caring and kind, but they also believed in me. And even though I was coming in as sort of a secondary teacher and a teacher in training, really, like they knew I was an intern, that I was not their teacher. But they really still looked up to me, but they also like believed in me, like, no, you're a teacher, Mrs. Raleigh, and you're going to be a great teacher, and you can do this, and like, yeah, you should have your own class, and you'll do wonderfully. One of the kiddos too wrote something about, I'll really miss you and your crazy socks, which I had forgotten that was the year that I started wearing always the crazy socks. Today I'm wearing bunnies. Oh, nope, wrong way. There you go, bunnies. So to this day, I still wear my crazy socks. Although if you've read my blog post about ableist language, I guess I can't call them crazy socks anymore because I've been trying to eliminate the word crazy from my vocabulary. So wild socks, I guess, is what we'll go with, is my wild socks. But in any event, it reminded me of a lot of things. But it reminded me that it's good to reflect and to like come back to these kinds of things. And thank goodness that kids are great at giving you notes and art and making you books and poems and all those kinds of things, because I have so many of these things and I think I need to revisit them more often. But I also need to like celebrate how far I've come too. I was such a new young teacher then, and I think a lot about, even just since leaving the classroom, like, what if I had a do-over, or what if I had another chance, a second chance in the classroom? What would be different and what would be the same? And so it was just really interesting, because that's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. It was interesting to like really take it back to the beginning and to think about who I was as a teacher then, and the things that I had learned that year, and all of the things that I had no clue about yet, because there were a lot of them. There were definitely a lot of them. So that's very sort of long-winded vlog for today, but it was just nice to reflect on my third graders and just, being a third grade teacher, it definitely was a formative experience for me and a really awesome learning opportunity. I also remember I had some struggles with, it was the second semester. I was really ready to like, oh my gosh, just give me my own classroom, and had some struggles with my mentor teacher and, just trying to find my own voice and all that. And I remember it feeling really overwhelming to try to navigate all of that. All at the same time, also while trying to find my first, full-time teaching job for the following year. And feeling a little bit lost and a little bit unsure of myself, and comparing myself because all of my friends, all of my colleagues were getting jobs before me, and that really shook my confidence. Like, oh, am I doing something wrong? And so it's interesting how also there's some themes there that are kind of recurring, and have recurred over the course of the last 6 or so years, but even themes that I've been kind of thinking about and grappling with lately too. So I think that's probably, maybe that's now that I'm processing all this out loud, that's probably the thing that I need to dig in more, and think more about. But in any event, there's my long-winded vlog for today. I hope everybody's doing great, and I will see you all tomorrow.